right, party people. So in today's video, guys, we're gonna talk about why you should skip picking up the 365 X Macro and instead do something like this. Over the course of these past 500 to 600 rounds, I've come to the conclusion that if you don't already own a P365, you don't need to go out and buy one. You can literally just put one together like this, have something that's far superior, and it would be probably a little bit less money to put one together than it would be to buy one and then upgrade it later. Also, there will be a parts list. So that will be the very first link in the video description, and I'll also pin that link in the comments. So what makes the X Macro so much more special than the other P365s? Number one, reduced recoil with a compensator. Now, this isn't really a new thing. I believe that some people had compensated slides on their XLs and in the Spectre comp, but the Spectre comp's like $1,200. So they came out with the comp for the 365, and it's a compensated slide in a shortened barrel, which we'll cover in more detail when we look at it up close. The second thing that they fixed was the magazine capacity. It is now 17. However, with that said, despite shooting 500 rounds between both mags, this one I am still only able to get 16 into, and this one I can barely fit 17 into. So they come very tight from the factory, and they take a long time to break in. Which, when you think about 17 plus capacity, this is 17, and this is 17. This is my 19X, and you can see the difference in size is quite drastic. Another one to compare it to would be something like the M&P 2.0 metal over here is also 17, and this one is 17. The next pro is we finally have a proper pick rail on here that will fit some lights that we actually want to have on here. I have the TLR 7A on here. I've also seen people put the TLR 7 sub. It's really personal preference, but I have it on here for a very specific reason, which we'll cover when we get to holsters. Now, this pro isn't really specific to the X Macro, I don't believe, but it is specific to the 365s in general. You do get a perfect co-witness using the OEM iron sights with a 507 or 407K. It does have the X-ray sights on here, which I don't like because they have something called a combat sight picture, which we'll cover more in depth here in a minute when we go over the shooting experience. Fifth thing that they fixed is we now have interchangeable back straps right here that will change what the palm swell feels like in your hand. So if you have a bigger hand or you like having a palm swell, it'll give you a better feel and you'll be able to hang on to it just a tad bit better when you're out shooting it. Now, something you should keep in mind, shooting an OEM 365 X Macro feels nowhere near as close as shooting the upgraded version that my buddy Mike let me shoot. So when I first took this out to the range, I didn't have any malfunctions or anything. Everything shot flawlessly. The magazines were, like I said earlier, were a little bit tight. I couldn't fill them completely. But aside from that, the gun shot well. I just didn't shoot well with it.
Not very accurate. Oh, I suck with this. This thing's getting higher, look. I don't know.
Now, despite all of those improvements on the P365 X Macro, there are still a couple of cons that are kind of make it or break it type cons for me. Number one, I still can't hang on to this grip any better than I can hang on to the XL grip. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit easier, but it's not enough for me to want to trust my life with it. I'm just not that good with it. Is when you get your support hand on here, I have nowhere to put my thumb, so I can hang on to it. Whereas say with my 19X, I have a ledge here that I can grip and mitigate recoil. I can also do the same thing on this M2.0. Even though it doesn't really have a dedicated ledge, I can hang on to it and my thumb doesn't really slip off at all with this. Something I've realized about myself with grips is my knuckles need to ride on this outer edge right there. And when they ride there perfectly, I'm able to lock those knuckles into my hands and get the perfect grip for me. And I'm able to hang on to it like nobody's business. The problem with the smaller grip for me is when I go to get my natural grip, my knuckles land in the front and they don't lock. They just start sliding like this. And I can't get my thumb on here. So that was a problem. The next problem that I had was my point of impact was all over the place when I was first shooting it. And that's because this has combat sights on it. There's typically 3 different sight pictures when it comes to iron sights. You have the combat sight picture, you have the 6 o'clock hold, and you have the center hold. Most sights that I have fired have been center hold, where you don't have to cover up the entire target with your sights. You can just rest your sights slightly below and you're able to hit where you're aiming. And the problem too with combat sight picture is when you do press out, your entire slide is covering what you're aiming at. And it's almost like you're shooting blind. And so I don't really like it. Now, thankfully, once I threw the red dot on here and took that to the range, that solved the problem completely. But again, they do make iron sights for these that eliminate the combat sight picture. I'll have a link to those over at the parts list just in case you have one of these and you want to upgrade the sights and not have that combat sight picture. So because I had those problems, I immediately went home and started changing everything that I could. First thing that I needed to upgrade was the grip, because that was the most important upgrade for me. And so I picked up this guy, which is the Icarus Precision Grip module for the X Macro specifically. Now this is a 7075 T6 aluminum grip with a standard mil-spec Picatinny rail, which will fit the same lights as the OEM X Macro grip as well. Funny about Icarus is these types of grips have been available since before the X Macro was available. They actually started doing this, I believe, around the time the XL came out or right before it. Now the grip texture on this is absolutely insane. You can really hang on to it really well, and I love that to death. It also has recontoured the ergos of this thing, so you can actually grip this a lot higher than you can your standard P365s or XLs or X Macros, and you have an ambidextrous thumb ledges, so that way you can really mitigate recoil. And it just depends whether you're right-handed or wrong-handed. Now, these types of grips are only available in 2 colors. You can either get them in anodized black, or you can get them in an anodized bronze. I thought I was getting a bronze one, at least that's what they told me for testing, but I ended up with a black one, but I'm not complaining. Now, because you can grip this so much higher, I did install the Align Tactical Offset magazine release, because if you don't, your fingers might hit the OEM mag release and you might get accidental mag drops when you're actually doing live fire. And nobody wants that, so why not mitigate that? Now, the next upgrade that I did was from a company called Tactical Trigger. And what's cool about Tactical Trigger is I worked with them a little bit back in 2017 on a Glock trigger, and he made a really good Glock trigger. And I haven't really worked with him since. But I found out he had a trigger kit for these, and it really, really helps. Take up, break, reset. It reduces the pre-travel, it reduces the over-travel, and it drops the weight by about 2 pounds. So now we're pulling anywhere from the high 3s to the low 4s. He also has different springs. So if you prefer more of a crisp brake, you can install that spring. Or if you prefer more of a rolling brake, you can install that spring. Now don't worry, this isn't gonna be the only video we do on this, because there's a ton of aftermarket parts for it, and so I might as well make a complete video series. I don't know how many videos we're gonna have total, but I could foresee in the future at least 5 or 6 different P365 videos. So I will be trying more triggers, more grips, more slides, more barrels, and all that crazy stuff. And just for fun, I threw on an FDesWorks 365 XL slide, which is essentially an X Macro slide that is also compensated, and they included the X Macro barrel, which is also 3.1 inches. Works just as good as the OEM. The one thing I did notice about this is it is a lot smoother to rack than the OEM slide, and I'm guessing because the nitriting on this is a lot smoother than the OEM finish. When I took this guy out to the range in its final form, picked up this dueling tree that collapses down and goes into like a hard case that's the size of a rifle case. I got this dueling tree, I got it from Birchwood Casey. I'll have a link to it over at the parts list. But I've always wanted the dueling tree, but I needed something that collapsed and wasn't too heavy. So the first time I tried shooting the dueling tree with the Icarus grip, I couldn't get it zeroed correctly. I wasn't hitting it at all. But then me and my buddy Mike got it zeroed in perfectly, and I was able to shoot the living crap out of that dueling tree. Not only that, I was also able to shoot fast and flat with this, and I'm able to shoot this thing so well that I would absolutely trust my life with it because I didn't have any malfunctions, nothing like that. Because trust me, if you ever get a chance to try this grip module, you won't want to shoot a regular Sig anymore. But over the course of testing this, I've come to another conclusion. If you currently own a P365, you don't need to go out and buy an X Macro. You can just assemble something like this for much cheaper than going and buying an X Macro. So if you upgrade an OEM X Macro, this is what the cost breakdown would be. The X Macros range anywhere from $800 to $850, depending on where you pick them up, who has them in stock, where you live, and your taxes. And I'll have links to where they're in stock over at the parts list for you. But I paid $799 for mine, plus I think it was like $60 with taxes, so I paid about $860. These grips are $400. This is the most important modification. So if you bought this grip, bought that for $860, you're now looking at about $1,260 total, which is about what the Spectre comp cost. And then if you want to do things like the trigger and barrels and slides and other stuff, it costs more. But if you wanted to put one together yourself, you could either go get a base model P365, that's $499, or you can get the P365 upgraded fire control units, which were about $275 to $350, depending on where you get them, but I'll make sure to have links to them over at the parts list. So let's just call it $350. So if you had a base model P365 and you wanted to buy this frame and this slide, you could reuse your barrel, then get a guide rod. You're looking at a little over $1,300 out the door. Or if you got those really cool FCUs that I've seen floating around, doing the same thing but with a FDES Works barrel, it would only be like $1,320-ish or something like that. And I don't say that to try to sell you these things, guys. I don't care what you guys go out and buy. It's your money, do what you want. It all depends on what you like and what you're good with. If you're good with these stock frames, then by all means, shoot the stock frame. I just suck with it. And I think at the very minimum, the grip is a must-have for any P365. If I had to do this complete build over again, I would just build it from scratch. But if I was gonna spend my own money on everything, and I went the route that I did where I owned an X Macro, I would literally probably just buy the grip and the trigger kit as of right now, and obviously the light. I don't think that the OEM slide and barrel really need to be upgraded unless you're just really looking for something that just looks different, because they function pretty much the same. With that said, it's a great slide, it's a great barrel, but I just don't know if it's necessary unless you're trying to put a comp onto your XL, or if you're building one of these from scratch. From what I understand, there should be some P365 X Macro exchange kits coming out. I don't know if those are available yet, but if they are, I will have links to them over at the parts list just in case. So let's talk about the holster and light situation. So currently I don't have a holster for this yet. I do have one coming. The reason I'm using a TLR7A on here is Tier 1 Concealed makes an appendix rig for the 365 X Macro with a TLR7A. And when you look at this from the top down, the TLR7A is just as wide as these thumb ledges. And so I'm hoping that this will also fit it with this frame. There are holsters out there that are specific to these frames. Most of them aren't appendix rigs. I'm sure there are some out there that I haven't heard of, but I prefer Tier 1 Concealed, and so that's what I'm gonna try, so we will have a video on that in the very near future. But if the holster situation works out, this could be my very next carry gun because I'm that good with it, and that's saying a lot for a smaller gun for me. Now let's talk about some cons. So the X Macro has one big con, and multiple people have talked about it. That is, it gets really hot when you're shooting it a lot. I would say if you shoot probably 5 mags back to back, just bang, 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 it's gonna get pretty hot. And the reason why it gets hot is because the comp is integrated into the slide. And so the heat transfers down the slide, and then because this grip is aluminum, the heat will transfer into the grip, which was the case when I shot my buddies.
So this grip is incredibly hot. See if I can, ooh, it's so hard to hold. I can't do it, I gotta wait.
It was hot outside that day. It was probably 95 degrees. The gun's black, so when it's sitting on the tailgate, it's absorbing the rays from the sun. Now, since that time, during my testing with my grip and everything, it's been in the 70s. and it hasn't gotten too hot for me to shoot barehanded as of yet. Take that as a grain of salt. Just understand that this is gonna get really hot. So this isn't gonna be something you're gonna wanna shoot a competition with. But for concealed carry, it's perfect. It's not like you're burning down targets while you're out there concealed carrying. It's just staying in your pants almost 100% of the time. So if it's hot and sunny outside, this gun's gonna get hot. If it's not too hot outside, it won't get as hot as quick. So I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on this setup right here. Let me know if you hate it, or let me know if you love it, or let me know if you've done something similar. I'd love to hear your guys' feedback on it. Oh, and by the way, I heard if you hit the like button, I think 3 times, it automatically downvotes this video 5 times. Try that out and let me know how it works for you. But until next time, guys, I love you. You guys stay sexy.